Good afternoon. I'd like to call the October 1st, 2013 City Council meeting to order. Will you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll.
Councilmember Francisco. Here. Hotchkiss. Here. House.
Here.
Murillo. Here. Rouse.
Here.
White. Here. Mayor Schneider.
Here. And item number 1.
Employee Recognition Service Award pins.
Thank you. Mr. Casey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. As you know, each month we like to recognize employees who are receiving their service award pins for milestones in their service with the city. And we'd like to read into the record this month 7 employees who've reached milestones, including 2 who are here to receive their pins in person. With 5 years, we have Hank Caralejo, with automotive parts specialist with Public Works, Allison Gray, a supervising librarian with the library, and James Hatzidakis with the parking coordinator with Waterfront. They all have received 5 years of service with the city. With 15 years of service to the city, we have Salvador Marquez, Vehicle Services Assistant with Public Works, and Judith McCaffrey, a Recreation Programs Manager in Parks and Recreation. And with 25 years of service, and they're both here to receive their pins today, are Allison Baird, Plans Examiner with the Community Development Department, and David Lewis, the Wastewater Treatment Supervisor in Public Works.
Okay, if Ms. Baird could come on up first. There we go. Allison Baird was hired in October of 1998 as a senior clerk for the records section of the Building and Safety and Community Development. In October 1991, her position was reclassified to an Office Specialist 3, where she was transferred to the Building and Safety Administration section, providing clerical and administrative support to the Chief Building Official and Assistant Building Official. In July of 1994, Allison was transferred back to the records section as a senior office specialist. And in August of 1997, Allison was temporarily appointed clerical coordinator overseeing the records section. On April 1998, Allison was promoted to a building inspector aide, and in August of 2010, she was promoted to a plans examiner, which is her current position. Allison is a certified plans examiner by the International Code Council and performs plan reviews primarily on residential structures, ensuring building code compliance with the California Code of Regulations and city ordinances. She also works at the permit counter, taking in project submittals, issuing permits, and also assists in coordinating with the various land development team departments to ensure that projects are processed and delivered to applicants on time. Allison's a valued member of the Community Development Department, Building and Safety Division, a real joy to work with. And so it's my pleasure to honor you today for your 25 years of service to the City of Santa Barbara. On behalf of the City Council, we congratulate you on this admirable achievement. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Just thank you all very much. It's been a very exciting 25 years. Jim left me a message last week that said he didn't think I was old enough to get 25 years in, so take that as a compliment. But anyhow, thank you all very much.
And then David, Mr. Lewis. David Lewis began his career with the city on October 17, 1988 as a plant operator trainee at El Estero Wastewater Treatment Plant. He was promoted to Wastewater Treatment Plant Operator 1 in March of 1989 and to an Operator 2 position in December 1990. Since that time, David has been promoted to a Senior Operator position in 2005, to the Chief Operator position in 2007, and to his current Wastewater Treatment Supervisor position in 2010. He also holds a Grade 5 wastewater treatment operator certification from the California State Water Resources Control Board, which is the highest level of operator certification awarded. David leads a very important section of the city's wastewater utility. He routinely makes important technical and staffing decisions that are critical to the El Estero Wastewater Treatment Plant's operational success. Under his supervision and direction, the wastewater operations section successfully meets important wastewater treatment effluent quality standards set by the federal government. David has received numerous commendations over the years, including words of praise in early 2005 when he worked tirelessly to keep the El Estero wastewater treatment plant operational during days of sustained heavy rainfall. Later that same year, he volunteered in a city-led relief effort to assist Louisiana residents following the Hurricane Katrina disaster. David is married and lives in Goleta. He and his wife Esther are owners of the Muddy Waters Cafe in Santa Barbara. On his day off from city work, David can be found there brewing some of the best coffee in town. David Lewis, it's my pleasure to honor you today on 25 years of service to the city of Santa Barbara. On behalf of the City Council, we congratulate you on this admirable achievement. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, council members, I always wanted to say that. Thank you so much. I'm not well prepared with the speech, but I'd just like to thank the city for the opportunities that have been given to me. I'd like to acknowledge the people that I've worked with. It's a fantastic organization, and particularly at the wastewater treatment plant, we are unsung heroes at times. We have our moments, and it's... I remember the day I started in 1988, Steve Strasberg, I have to mention him. He was my predecessor and he was my mentor. He was my teacher. He was literally my instructor in a beginning wastewater treatment plant or beginning wastewater treatment course through City College, which changed my life. That one class changed my life. I later became, first I worked for Summerlin, then I worked for the city. Many years later, I taught that class myself. I felt like I came full circle. And the people I currently work with, a lot of them are here. I want to thank you for coming, each and every one of you. Todd Heldorn in particular, Thomas Welch. My wife mentioned, my father's here, and all my colleagues. That we're a very strong team down there at El Estero, and it's just an amazing place to work, and I feel I'll be back here in 5 years for my 30-year pen. Thank you very much.
Proclamation declaring October 4th, 2013 as California Arts Day and October 2013 as National Arts and Humanities Month.
Great. Ms. Brush, you'd like to come on up? For more than 3 decades, thousands of arts and cultural organizations, communities, and states across the country have joined the White House and Congress in recognizing October as National Arts and Humanities Month. And the arts and humanities embody much of the accumulated wisdom, intellect, and imagination of humankind and inspire and enrich the lives of every American. And the governor, state legislature, California Arts Council have declared October 4th as California Arts Day, coinciding with National Arts and Humanities Month, to demonstrate the role and values of arts and culture throughout our state and to encourage residents to explore, participate, and engage in what's offered by local arts organizations. And the city grants over $447,000 annually in city funds to nonprofit organizations in support of art and culture in our city through its 29th year partnership with the County Arts Commission. The city also grants over $189,000 annually for iconic citywide cultural events such as Summer Solstice Celebration, Old Spanish Days, and the Santa Barbara International Film Festival. And the city acknowledges the vital and vibrant role of artists enriching our quality of life while fueling innovation in our local economy. So therefore, I, Helene Schneider, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the city of Santa Barbara, California, do hereby proclaim October as National Arts and Humanities Month and October 4th as California Arts Day in Santa Barbara, and encourage citizens to celebrate, participate, and promote the arts and culture in our community for the betterment of future generations. And thank you for your leadership, Ms. Brush, on all you do for the arts. Thank you very much. If you'd like to say that.
Thank you so much. I just again want to take this opportunity to Mayor Schneider and members of council to thank you for your ongoing recognition of the value of arts and humanities and your strong support of those those areas in our community. I want to also take this opportunity to thank those who teach and nurture a love and appreciation of arts and humanities, and to those who generously give of their time, their talent, and resources to support and foster and promote the arts and humanities in our community. October traditionally serves as the kickoff to this year's arts cycle. And there's some important upcoming dates that I want to encourage you to get on your calendars. October 3rd is First Thursday, and it's also the kickoff of the Big Read at the library. October 4th, California Arts Day will take an opportunity to have a reception honoring all of our grantees of this year's all these grant recipients for this year. October 10th through 21st, we'll find pianos along State Street. October 17th through the 19th, the New Noise Festival. And October 19th, a Funk Zone Arts Fest. So that's just a few of the offerings this October. So I encourage all of those in the community to come out and partake in our local offerings. Thank you again so much.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, public comment. I have one speaker slip here. We have 2 minutes here at the dais, and it's Matthew Kramer. Come on up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and fellow City Council members. I'm here to speak about item 9, which is the natural gas franchise.
So then I'm going to ask you, actually, when we come up to item 9, I'll bring you up at that point, because this is public comment for items not on the agenda.
Whatever you wish, ma'am.
Okay, so
Thank you.
I'll bring you back up for item 9. Okay. Okay, any other public comment speaker slips? I don't see any. Okay, so I'll close public comment. We're on to the consent calendar, and there are no items to read this time. So is there anyone need to take something off, or is there a motion to approve the
I'll
consent
move to
calendar?
approve the consent calendar.
Okay, moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Great. All right, on to item number 9.
Gas franchise hearing and introduction of ordinance, including recommendation B, that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only an ordinance of the Council of the City of Santa Barbara granting Southern California Gas Company a franchise to install, use, maintain, repair, and replace pipes and appurtenances for the purpose of transmitting and distributing natural gas for any and all purposes within the City of Santa Barbara.
Thank you, Ms. Schmidt.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and City Council members. Christy Schmidt from the City Administrator's Office. On September 10th, we made a presentation to you, and you adopted a resolution of intent to award a franchise to SoCal Gas. The next step in the process under the city charter is to have a public hearing where the public can comment on the proposed terms of the franchise. We don't have an additional staff report today. The terms that we are proposing the franchise be granted on are the same as 3 weeks ago. So if there are no questions, we can just open the floor for public comment.
Okay, any questions first? Okay, Mr. Kramer, now's your chance. Come on back up. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you again for your time. I'm here to speak about natural gas as an expert in alternative fuels. I would call to your attention the San Bruno explosion, which killed 8 people and destroyed 38 homes. And this was because of a natural gas transmission pipeline. So what assurances do we have as residents of the city that the natural gas companies, which they were not doing in San Bruno, are keeping their gas lines in good repair? That's something I'd like to see with this new franchise. And as a forward-thinking resident, we actually removed the gas line at our residence, which was a historic Santa Barbara-style home by Winston, Soleil, and Murphy, the same architectural firm that did Roosevelt School. So we were actually able to remove all natural gas devices and the gas line itself all the way to the street. And when we did that, it was disturbing to find out exactly how natural gas is distributed underneath the streets of Santa Barbara and how easy it is for that type of explosion to happen here in town. My little brother, who's a firefighter here, has expressed to me his horror at seeing in person some of these explosions when he worked in the Bay Area. And I would hate to have that happen here in town. So I urge you to take a really hard look and to not trust what the gas company is saying, because we have evidence that they've been wrong before. So let us keep our gas lines in good repair for the next 40 years and possibly also give them a shorter contract. I think within the next 40 years, you're going to see more competition in the natural gas space from smaller firms, and I think that's something that should be allowed under the current contract. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So that closed the public hearing. It's back to the council for any questions, comments, or motion.
Move the staff recommendation, Madam Mayor, A and B.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, yes, go ahead, Mr. House. There's a
Just real
second, and
quickly,
Mr. House.
I appreciate the speaker's concerns, and we did address that at the last hearing, the issue of maintenance and upkeep, and I know that I was satisfied by the answer, but I appreciate the concerns.
Okay, so there was a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, item number 10.
Single-use bag ordinance, including recommendation B, that council introduce and subsequently adopt by reading of title only, an ordinance of the council of the city of Santa Barbara amending the Santa Barbara Municipal Code by adding chapter 9.150 pertaining to the use of single-use carryout bags at certain retail food and grocery store establishments within the city.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to have to step aside on this issue. My wife runs a reusable bag service at Lazy Acres to support Safe Launch, which is a charity that deals with childhood addiction. So I will need to step aside on this item.
Okay, adios. So before we get started, just to let everyone know how this is going to work, this is an item for consideration for introduction of an ordinance. It's also an appeal, so we're going to combine the two into this one item. There'll first be a staff presentation, then the appellant will have up to 30 minutes to present his appeal, then it'll be open to public comment, and then it'll be to the council. I don't know if there's any planning commissioners here who want to speak. I don't see any, but maybe after the staff presentation. Obviously, council members, if they have questions throughout, they can ask that. I did notice some big signs coming into the room. I would ask that you do not hold them up during the hearing, just so we can see everybody, and we try to keep decorum in here, but I saw them coming in, so we did see them. With that, Mr. Four.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. Matt Four, Environmental Services Manager. And with me today, because this is going to be a joint presentation, is Mr. Dan Gollett with Community Development, and also Mr. Joe Power with Rincon Consultants, the firm that developed and drafted the environmental impact report that studied the proposed ordinance. So today we're going to go into a couple of items in this presentation. The first will be to give a little bit of background on our process, and then talk about the elements of the ordinance, what it will actually do. Thirdly will be the environmental review process, and that's where Mr. Gollett will take over with the presentation. And then lastly, to talk about the appeal of the Planning Commission's decision that was filed by Mr. Stephen Joseph on behalf of the Save the Plastic Bag Coalition, appealing the decision by the Planning Commission in August to certify the environmental impact report. So just a little bit of background on how we got here. In August of 2009, the city launched a voluntary Where's Your Bag campaign. The purpose of this voluntary program was to really raise awareness on the environmental impacts of single-use plastic carryout bags and to encourage patrons and consumers to use reusable bags. The program set up tabling events at local grocery stores. We recruited about 10 stores, provided them with signage and educational materials. It was effective in raising awareness, but in terms of actually shifting behavior, we feel that the success was rather limited. We then came back to council in March of 2012, and at that point, council directed staff to develop an ordinance to promote the shift toward reusable bags. It also directed staff to work with Beacon, a joint powers authority of jurisdictions in Santa Barbara and Ventura County, to develop a regional environmental impact report, such that any jurisdiction could use that EIR as the environmental review mechanism for their own ordinance if they chose to do so. In April of 2012, then, staff presented the draft single-use carryout bag ordinance to the City Council, actually to the Ordinance Committee, excuse me, and it was modeled after the ordinance that was adopted by Los Angeles County. It was also very similar to the ordinances that were adopted by the City of San Jose, City of Long Beach, Pasadena, and also Santa Monica. The Ordinance Committee referred the draft ordinance to City Council, and then Council referred the draft ordinance to Beacon, and the ordinance would then serve as the, quote, project to be studied under the Environmental Impact Report. In April of 2013, then, following the preparation and circulation of the EIR, staff then brought that ordinance back to the Ordinance Committee to say this is the ordinance that was studied, any changes to be made, and the Ordinance Committee unanimously voted to refer the proposed ordinance that was studied to the full council for consideration. So what does the proposed ordinance do? It does a couple things. First, it would ban single-use plastic bags from grocery stores, and it would require those stores to charge a 10-cent fee on single-use paper bags. That would be any size paper bags, so the large grocery bags all the way down to the small ones. It would require that stores, or would mandate that stores could only provide recyclable paper bags or reusable bags. So with the recyclable paper bags, they would have to contain, for example, 40% recyclable material, or they could provide reusable bags to patrons. It would allow stores to use the revenue generated from the recyclable paper bag fee to comply with the ordinance. So, for example, to provide reusable bags to patrons, to encourage them to use them, and the cost of administration. It would require stores to report to the city on an annual basis on the number of paper bags that they distributed, the monies collected, and then any other educational efforts that they undertook to educate and to persuade consumers to shift to reusable bags. It would also require stores to provide free reusable or recyclable paper bags to participants of the WIC program and also to those that receive food stamps. So that's what the ordinance does. Now, who does the ordinance regulate? It's going to regulate two types of stores. We've broken them into two tiers in the ordinance. The first is what we call Tier 1 stores, and really what that means is large grocery stores. So the first category would be large grocery stores greater than 10,000 square feet, and that also sell a line of groceries, milk, bread, things like that, or pharmacies that also sell the limited line of groceries. So typical grocery stores, Vaughn's, Albertsons, Lazy Acres, those sorts of stores, and then other stores like CVS, the large pharmacies that also happen to sell a line of groceries. That would be your Tier 1 store. The second tier, the Tier 2 stores, is really everything else, every other store that sells a line of groceries. So what we're really talking about here are mini-marts, gas stations with a mini-mart, even liquor stores that sell milk, bread, and a limited line of food. And when would the ordinance take effect?
Mr. Francisco has a question.
Mr. Four, those Tier 1 stores, I don't know how big, say, Trader Joe's or Tri-County Produce, those kinds of stores are. Do those fit into that Tier 1 category?
Absolutely, they do.
Okay, thank you.
So when does the ordinance take effect? The ordinance would take effect in two different stages. The first would be 6 months after the effective date, and the Tier 1 stores, the large groceries, then would be regulated 6 months after. The purpose of this grace period is to allow them to deplete their existing stocks of non-compliant bags. A lot of them order months and months in advance. This allows them to deplete it, also to get ready for the ordinance, so reprogramming registers and things like that. The Tier 2 stores would have a full year to do that, and so, and we will certainly be helping them with those steps.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of council. Dan Gullett, Associate Planner. So for environmental review for this proposed ordinance, Beacon has served as the city's agent for CEQA compliance. Beacon provided a notice of preparation in November, held public scoping meetings in December, prepared and released a draft EIR for public comment in February and March, and responded to public comment and released a final EIR in May. City staff prepared an addition to the EIR summarizing impacts from the city ordinance on the city specifically and clarifying the city's role as lead agency for CEQA purposes. The EIR's approach was a reasonable worst-case analysis as required under CEQA. Some of the assumptions to that end were a shift toward paper and reusable bag use from the current use of plastic carryout bags. Reusable bags were considered to be used once a week for 1 year only, so 52 times for reusable bags. The ordinance actually requires that those bags be usable for a minimum of 125 times. The EIR also assumes that current paper bag users don't switch to reusable bags. Even with the ordinance and the 10-cent fee, the assumption is that switch wouldn't happen. And all recyclable paper bags would be landfilled after a single use. The EIR focused on 5 specific areas: air quality, biological resources, greenhouse gas emissions, hydrology, water quality, and utilities and service systems. And I'll cover the EIR's findings on the next 2 slides. The initial study prepared prior to the EIR addressed other effects and other resource areas and found all of those to either have no impact or less than significant impacts. The EIR found that for air quality, the reduction in single-use plastic bag manufacturing resulting from the ordinance would reduce air pollutants, resulting in a beneficial impact. It also found that an increase in paper bags from the ordinance would result in a less than significant increases in transportation emissions. For biological resources, the reduction in single-use paper bags used would reduce litter affecting wildlife and habitat, which would be a beneficial impact. The EIR found that the increase in paper and reusable bags would result in a less than significant increase in greenhouse gas emissions, and that the ordinance would not conflict with greenhouse gas-related plans, policies, or regulations. For hydrology and water quality, the EIR found that the reduction in single-use plastic bags would reduce litter entering waterways, which would be a beneficial impact. It also found that increase in paper bag manufacturing would result in a less than significant degradation of water quality. For utilities and service systems, the increase in reusable bags would result in less than significant increases in water and wastewater use from bag washing, and increase in paper and reusable bags would increase solid waste generation, and that impact would also be less than significant. It's important to note that the EIR looked at the entire Beacon study area, which was Ventura County and Santa Barbara counties, except for the cities of Ojai and Carpinteria. And this is the result of the EIR. The results are scaled down by population. So the city's addition looks at the city's population and reduces these impacts accordingly. So the city of Santa Barbara is actually 8.5% of the entire Beacon study area. So in addition to the proposed ordinance, the EIR includes 5 different alternatives. 1 is no project. 2 is ban on all retail single-use plastic bags except at restaurants. The 3rd is a ban on plastic bags and a 25-cent charge for paper bags. The 4th is a ban on both paper and plastic bags, and the last is a 10-cent charge for plastic and paper bags. The EIR found that the ban on both single-use plastic and paper carry-out bags was the environmentally superior alternative. Since the proposed ordinance would not result in any significant adverse impacts, choosing alternative 4 wouldn't avoid any significant impacts. The Planning Commission certified the EIR on August 8th. Save the Plastic Bag Coalition appealed the EIR certification on August 19th. So today's hearing is a de novo hearing for City Council's consideration of the appeal and certification of the EIR. The Save the Plastic Bag Coalition's appeal letter provides additional comments on the final EIR. There were other additional issues raised since the Planning Commission review by Mr. Anthony Van Leeuwen, who I believe is in attendance too. Those comments were addressed in Exhibit B of the draft findings resolution of the council agenda report. The next 4 slides are a summary of the issues raised from Save the Plastic Bag Coalition and Mr. Van Leeuwen. These are in order of the Save the Plastic Bag Coalition's appeal letter. For A1, the appellant cites Santa Monica High School study on the Santa Monica bag ban ordinance. He indicates that paper bag use increases over time following ordinance implementation. So the study confirms the initial trend with the switching to reusable and paper bags, but it doesn't establish the long-term trend that's indicated. The ordinance itself requires within 2 years that staff return to council to report on monitoring of the effectiveness of the ordinance. At that time, there would be opportunity to change the ordinance if it's found to be not effective. For Claim A2, the appellant states that substitute bags will be purchased to replace plastic bags for secondary uses, like trash bin liners and for picking up dog waste. The suggested analysis from the appellant, Mr. Van Leeuwen, was provided and actually looks at impacts from replacing 40% of the plastic carryout bags that would be banned with equivalent bags for secondary uses, like lining trash bins, picking up dog waste, and impacts from doing that were found to be less than significant. Claim B, reusable bags have higher greenhouse gas emissions per bag than analyzed. The appellant provides a metric for the greenhouse gas impact for reusable bags. Using that information, the impacts were still found to be less than significant. For C, the appellant claims that the lifespan of reusable bags is inappropriate and suggests that 2 reusable bags or 2 uses per reusable bag be analyzed in the EIR. The appellant doesn't provide any substantial information supporting 2 uses per reusable bag. Again, the ordinance requires reusable bags to be usable for at least 125 times, so we believe 52 uses per reusable bag is a reasonable and conservative estimate. Claim D, non-woven polypropylene reusable bags are not recyclable. These bags do have a recycle code, but they are not currently recycled in Santa Barbara County. It's not really relevant to the EIR analysis because the EIR doesn't assume that any reusable bags would be recycled. Claim E, stormwater capture devices would prohibit bags from entering waterways. They do prohibit some bags from entering waterways during high flow conditions. Those stormwater capture devices open. Bags do get into waterways, other ways, open channels, and through other means. F, discussion of marine impacts is inaccurate. This was addressed previously. Plastic bags have been shown to have greater potential to detrimentally affect marine life through ingestion and entanglement of marine life. G, plastic carryout bag definition doesn't acknowledge some bags are derived from oil and natural gas. We've actually revised the draft ordinance definition to include natural gas as a source of material for some plastic bags, and that was discussed in the EIR previously. H, the city must revise and recirculate the draft EIR. Changes made and additional information provided since the EIR was in draft clarify and amplify the analysis, but don't involve any new significant impacts. So per CEQA, EIR recirculation is not required. Save the plastic bag. Coalition correspondence submitted after close of public review should be attached to the final EIR. Those letters are included in the council agenda report. They are included in the city's record of the final EIR. So if this EIR is adjudicated, that information would be available to the court. And J, Save the Plastic Bag Coalition and Mr. Van Leeuwen were entitled to a notice of the Planning Commission hearing. It's planning's practice to provide notices for hearings like the certification hearing at the Planning Commission. Courtesy notices were actually sent using the list provided by Beacon. That list unfortunately wasn't updated with Mr. Joseph's new mailing address. So he didn't receive the notice until after that hearing. So he didn't have the opportunity to attend the Planning Commission hearing. There was a display ad that was in the news press for the Planning Commission hearing. Individual noticing is actually not required for citywide issues and not required per CEQA or city rules. This last slide is summarizing issues raised by Mr. Van Leeuwen since the Planning Commission review. The first one is that the EIR should include an alternative with a ban on plastic bags and no charge for paper bags. That alternative was actually considered but rejected in the EIR because it wouldn't deter the use of paper bags. Paper bags are shown to have greater impacts related to air quality, greenhouse gas emissions, water quality in comparison to plastic bags. L is solid waste impacts don't fully account for landfilling reusable bags. The suggested analysis by Mr. Van Leeuwen was done in impacts from landfilling all reusable bags each year were found to be less than significant, and that analysis was even done adding in the secondary bag uses, and the result was the same, less than significant. Claim M, project utility data is inaccurate. Mr. Van Leeuwen provided alternative data, and the analysis showed that the alternative data still results in less than significant impacts. Again, we added in the 40% secondary bag uses in that too, and it's also less than significant. So the issues raised do not change the impact significant conclusions of the EIR. The city has fully complied with all provisions of CEQA. So staff's recommendations are to deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission certification of the final EIR and introduce and subsequently adopt the proposed single-use carryout bag ordinance. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. Is that the end of the staff report? Okay. I also want to acknowledge, I think he just stepped out of the room for a minute, but Mr. Brennan from Beacon is here in case there are any questions from a Beacon standpoint. I appreciate him being here. So with that, any questions from council at this point?
I have a question,
Go ahead.
Madam Mayor. On item L, as in Larry, can you just go over that again? I think I glossed over a little bit when you were talking. What did that mean? Solid waste impacts don't fully account for da-da-da-da-da.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Murillo, the EIR assumes 52 uses for reusable bags, and then those reusable bags are disposed of in landfills. So Mr. Van Leeuwen seemed to be correcting the solid waste tables showing that the entire volume of those, the yearly volume for those reusable bags would be landfilled each year. So that's.
Thank you.
Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To the team, I noticed that the amount of greenhouse gas emitted increases as a result of this proposed ordinance. Could you walk us through that? That seems like a little bit counterintuitive to what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure. Hi, Joe Power with Rincon Consultants. Yes, we essentially walked through the greenhouse gases based on, or trying to compare, obviously, what we think is going to happen post-ordinance versus what's happening today. With the shift, we made some, as has been discussed, some what we think are pretty conservative assumptions regarding how many times reusable bags will actually be used. We looked at both the effects associated with manufacture, use, and disposal, transportation of those, and ran through the numbers. And with those, what we think are very conservative assumptions, concluded that there would be a pretty minor increase in greenhouse gas emissions, far under the established significance thresholds that we used for the EIR, but we did conclude that there would be an incremental increase in emissions. Again, I think from our standpoint, the assumptions we used are conservative. We think there's a very high likelihood that in reality there will be greater use, much more than 52 uses per reusable bag, and if that happens, we would actually expect that number to go down and very likely to end up being a negative number. In other words, a net reduction in greenhouse gases. So again, we were trying to be very conservative. Using those conservative assumptions, we reached that conclusion. Given that we reached that conclusion and it was still under the significance threshold, we didn't feel it was necessary from a CEQA standpoint to examine, say, a less conservative assumption for that analysis.
And then to follow up on that, this does include, I mean, one of the sort of core benefits of the ordinance is to reduce the number of bags manufactured. That's kind of one of the maybe the biggest driver. This accounting takes into account the reduction in the amount of bags manufactured.
It does, but as we discuss in the EIR, of course, each reusable bag on a per bag basis, it's a heavier bag, a more substantial bag. It actually generates more emissions per bag, but it's really the reduction in bags that we think is going to offset that increase in per bag. And obviously, the more each bag is used, the more offset there will be.
And so it's that assumption, or maybe, I mean, there's a whole chain of assumptions that are made, but that, in your view, is the number of reuses, is that the one that would tips that greenhouse gas number one way or the other? You're saying it's a significant impact number, so we're not, the EIR clears that particular issue. However, I'm still looking for how this plays out in the
yeah. I mean, from our standpoint, absolutely, that's the most important number with respect to the balance of greenhouse gas emissions and the balance of all of the things that we quantified. It's that number of uses for the reusable bags. Again, I think we used a conservative assumption based on what we think is a conservative assumption. We did find minor increases in emissions and in solid waste use and this and that. We think the reality very likely is that you will have more uses of each reusable bag on average, and that balance will actually change.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. 52, I gather, once a week, but do we have any data that says how many times people are likely to use these kind of bags? I just never seen it, so I don't know.
Well, we don't have specific data. I'll let others chime in if they have an answer for that. Again, this is 52 total uses before the bag is assumed to be thrown away. In reality, the ordinance requires, as was stated earlier, that the bags be designed to be used a minimum of 125 times. So the assumption we made regarding how many total uses each bag would have is less than half of what the ordinance actually requires.
And where this kind of ordinance has been put in place, is there no measure about how many times people actually use a reusable bag?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Hotchkiss, to echo what Mr. Power said, not so much from the other cities, but we do have a design standard. You know, there is an industrial design standard that those reusable bags have to meet. They're tested in a laboratory. So that's how that 125 uses per bag is derived. Anecdotally, you know, we talked to a lot of people in town, even myself. I've had bags for years that have lasted well beyond 125. We took an approach that was conservative but reasonable, just so that we erred on the conservative side.
And in 2 years, when we come back and examine this, can we get a hard figure on this? Because a lot hinges on this.
We can.
Wouldn't that be a good idea to be able to properly evaluate our effectiveness?
I'll commit to try to do that.
Okay. Second question is I haven't examined what the appellant wants to do or wants you to do, but I think you probably have. If you did that, would it require the complete rewriting of the EIR?
Well, I would say no. I think what they've asked us to do, the calculations that they've asked us to do, and the revised assumptions they've asked us to look at, we've looked at. So the information is both in the final EIR and in the supplemental information that you've been given, both in the staff-prepared EIR edition and the staff report that you received today. So we've done all of the analysis that they've requested and still reached the same conclusion. So could we go into the EIR and actually change the text to use their assumptions rather than the assumptions we used?
Right. Is that a big deal?
Sure, we could. But the information's already there, and this is an informational document. You have all the information in front of you,
right,
and it's all reaching the same conclusion. So as far as we're concerned, we've done what they wanted done, and the information is there for you.
Okay, because I'm just looking down the line, and I'm sort of seeing maybe the appellant's going to say, well, we're going to court after this. I mean, heaven help us. But so if we just said, okay, we'll change this sentence, that sentence, et cetera, and
absolutely, we could do that. We could. I know one point in particular that's been of concern is the solid waste analysis. We don't think that the analysis, the methodologies that were provided by the appellants are unreasonable. We think they're reasonable methodologies too, just like we think the methodology we used was reasonable. We would, from our standpoint, it would be fine to replace the methodology we used with the one they used, but you already have that information. It's already all there, so as far as we're concerned, you've kind of got what you need.
I'm just trying to get to a yes here, and wondering if that would be relatively painless.
From our standpoint, it's painless, and if the decision was to replace one methodology for the other, it's a pretty simple change for us. It's not a big deal.
And the conclusions are the same still?
And the conclusions would not change.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Wiley, I was just thinking.
I've read the appellant's materials, and the thrust of what they're asking is that the document be recirculated. Fundamentally, they're asking that basically we go back and start over a process that would probably take a minimum of 6 months. So they're not just asking that the document be revised. They're asking that it be recirculated.
Okay.
And on that point, I think, and this is a fairly common tactic to take when challenging an EIR, there's a desire to, it's supposed to be in the binder, right? It's supposed to be in the EIR, but that's not the way CEQA works. The binder itself is typically the final EIR, the draft with all the comments, with all the responses to comments, which is what we have here. But in fact, what CEQA is about is typically then the agency, the city council approving a project, takes that EIR and all of the comments and documents and dialogue that occurs after the final binder has been prepared, and staff has responded to that, and then they become the additional documents. I've got a stack here. There's about a 3/4 of an inch of documents attached to the council agenda report. That's all part of the administrative record for environmental review, and frankly, that's all part of the EIR. It's not like we are going to negate it or it'll get buried. It'll all be part of the record. But there really isn't, what I'm saying here, there isn't a need to change the binder document.
I understand. Okay. Well, you brought up an important point, which is 6 months to recirculate, right? That would be required if you made the changes that they're asking, right? Or is recirculation not de facto necessary? Or is it? I don't know.
No, it's in my opinion, it's not legally required because of the fundamental environmental conclusions aren't going to change. And CEQA is about, EIR is about determining whether there's likely to be any significant adverse environmental impacts.
Right.
And the conclusions are here
They're
that
not.
even with making some of the assumptions that the appellants are making, the conclusions are that these will not be significant impacts. And in fact, in some cases, they're beneficial impacts. They're positive impacts, not adverse impacts.
Okay, so with that understanding, if the appellant chose to, whatever we do here, go to court.
Oh,
we're
and
looking-
I'm sure they will.
Okay, so really what our target here is 6 months, whether we can beat that or not. Would going to court extend that beyond 6 months, or is that not the right time to ask that question?
It so happens in this case, this ordinance has always had a staggered effective date. As Mr. Ford described, it's not effective for the Tier 1 stores until 6 months after its effective date. So in fact, that we're really 110 days or 120 days away from any effective date, even assuming the council is going to adopt this ordinance.
Right.
Then, I'm sorry, I got confused. We're 210 days away from the effective date of the ordinance on Tier 1 stores. If there is to be CEQA litigation, and I'm sure because this coalition has filed many CEQA challenges up and down the state over similar ordinances, so I take them at their express threat that they're going to litigate this. I would expect that litigation would be resolved well before that 6 month effective date.
It would be faster this way.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. House?
Thank you. I see Mr. Brennan came back in the room, and perhaps he'd take a minute with us. This is Mr. Brennan's the executive director of Beacon, and the questions that I have, and it's pretty straightforward, but it would be, why is it, if you take a minute and just share with us why it was that Beacon saw it was in the interest to do a regional environmental impact report, why would the Beach Erosion and Nourishment Clean Oceans and Nourishment Organization be concerned and interested? And then also, I think going into, there was a thought that Beacon would be certifying the EIR, but we're not. In that situation today, the city would be in that position. And maybe you just take a minute and talk to us about those two things.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, city staff. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in regards to this. It's been a long road, and I know we're at the tail end here. To address your question directly in regards to the regional aspects, is the realization that Beacon is an organization that represented a number of jurisdictions on the coast, and recognizing it was a major coastal concern for each coastal city, especially with the TMDLs put out by the Water Quality Control Board and some of the tightening up of all the regulation. That it made a lot of sense to, instead of piecemeal it, is to find one model ordinance, which you provided, and then to follow up with an EIR. The idea, again, is that we could have a regional effect on the issue of the plastic bag, both litter and in regards to perhaps lightening up on some regulation with putting these ordinances in place. The second piece of that, going into it, we looked at each jurisdiction was originally going to adopt its own ordinance. The ordinance put out by Santa Barbara was a draft ordinance. Each council or each body was allowed to change that in some way. Some cases it might involve addendum to the EIR, or and in some cases it might not. But the idea was up to that body to make it work for what they thought within their own jurisdiction. What you came up with was a model ordinance that everybody felt comfortable with, that it took care of a number of the concerns of the jurisdictions that were members of Beacon and felt that this was the best route to go.
Right.
I think is that
very good. That's great, and I understand a number of jurisdictions are considering utilizing this in their work.
They are.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Second question then for Mr. Ford, and thank you very much. Mr. Ford, you mentioned with regards to when you were talking about Tier 2 stores and then the Tier 1 stores, how you said the city is going to be helping them with their implementation steps. Would you just speak to that for a moment so we understand what we have in mind?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor, Councilmember House. Staff will be doing a number of things. First thing is helping them to identify what is a compliant bag. What's a prohibited bag, what's a compliant bag, both on the recyclable paper bag end, so giving them the standards, connecting them with suppliers that vend those bags, answering those questions. And what is the standard for reusable? What's 125 uses? We have that information. We'll be putting up a website should this ordinance be approved. We'll be putting up a website within about 30 days to immediately start to assist the regulated stores as well as consumers. We'll then be making, rounds and trips to the managers of those stores to explain, what is the ordinance, how do I comply, what are the reporting requirements, who do I talk to, and then finally we'll be doing some media outreach, so some radio spots, some television spots through City TV and things like that.
Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have another question for Mr. Brennan, if he wouldn't mind returning to the lectern. So, Mr. Brennan, on the very first page of the introduction of the EIR, it lists the municipalities in Santa Barbara County and Ventura County. Are all of those Beacon members?
I'm sorry, no.
For instance, Lompoc.
No, actually, they're not Beacon members.
Okay.
But the opportunity to use the EIR is available to them.
Okay. So,
it's not mandatory they do, but the option is open for them to utilize it.
Okay. So not necessarily all of these cities have actually asked to participate in this. It's just open to them if they want to.
Yes, I didn't mean to imply that they were going down that road at all, though I did want to say in the case of Ventura County, Moore Park and Thousand Oaks had actually called up and wanted to know if they could utilize the EIR if they wanted to go down that road.
Okay.
But I didn't mean to imply, or certainly Beacon, or did not to mean imply that those folks were in favor of it in any way, shape, or form.
Okay.
But it is open to them to use because it was both counties, the whole county being looked at. Thank you for a great question.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to turn it over to the appellant here, and there are 30 minutes listed at the lectern. Since you're sitting down there, I'll let you know when you have 10 minutes left and then 5 minutes left, if that helps. And want to make sure the green light's on at the mic there.
Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. I appeared before the City Council, I think it was in 2012 or 2011. Some of you will remember that. I congratulated this City Council for being the most honest City Council that we have come across in the state of California when it comes to the issue of plastic bags. We heard a great presentation at that time from staff about plastic bags. They said that plastic bag litter is not an issue in Santa Barbara. The results of any kind of litter survey in Santa Barbara were, they said, inconclusive. I was ready. I was, really ready to come and challenge yet another city council that was going to present a whole lot of false information and a whole lot of spin and so on. And I came in and I said, I congratulate this city council. I know some of you will remember that. I said, this is great. And then there was going to be this Beacon EIR. And I said, look, we'd like to work with Beacon. And we actually don't need an EIR, is what I said at the time. We would be satisfied with a 5, 6, 7, 8-page statement of the truth. What is the truth about plastic bags and the impacts? And everybody was in agreement, and everybody thought it was a good idea. So off we all went our separate ways, and I tried to contact Beacon, and I couldn't get a call returned. And time went on, and eventually a draft EIR came out of Beacon. And it was the same draft EIR that we've seen up and down the state from Rincon, consultants. It was nothing but the same old spin, misinformation, and I'm sorry, but I have to say it, a whole lot of fabrication. And they couldn't care less. They just ram these things through and challenge us to sue. So, you know, that's what we've been up against. And it's very disappointing because I had high expectations that the city of Santa Barbara would stand up for the truth. And I said that at the time, and it hasn't happened. You've let yourselves down by relying on Beacon, or more to the point, relying on Joe Power and Rincon Consultants. And I don't mean that personally, but it is nevertheless a travesty because the truth has not been told. The draft EIR was terrible. It was totally dishonest. We submitted extensive objections and supporting evidence, and our comments were ignored by Beacon. Oh, yes, they responded, but responded with what? Just dismissive sentences. More to the point, mischaracterizations of what we had said so they could dismiss straw men. So, fine, they were supposed to certify the EIR, Beacon, but they said, no, we're not going to do the certification anymore. We've changed our mind. And they wrote into the EIR that the city councils and boards of supervisors would do the certification, including the Santa Barbara City Council. Okay, so we were waiting. Mr. I can't pronounce his last name, Anthony and I were waiting for the Santa Barbara City Council to put this on the agenda for certification. And we were watching every single week or two the agenda to see when it came up, because we knew that Santa Barbara was going to go first. Well, what happened? I got a notice in the mail about August 9th or 10th telling me about a planning commission hearing on August the 8th, and that the planning commission was going to certify the EIR, apparently it already had. The letter was sent to my old address in San Francisco, which I have not provided to Beacon. It was something in the old database of Rincon Consultants, who we had told before about this, and they don't seem to make corrections to their database. We are entitled under CEQA to notice. We filed a written request for notice. We received no notice of the Planning Commission hearing. Now, that notice was sent to my San Francisco address. It was forwarded from a postal service in San Francisco to me and arrived after the Planning Commission hearing. I had plenty to say. I had never even seen the addendum, the city addendum to the EIR. I had plenty to say to the Planning Commission about local impacts. As for Anthony, sitting behind me, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his last name, he received no notice whatsoever of this meeting. He too, like me, we were communicating. We were looking for the Santa Barbara City Council agenda. We had no idea there was going to be a Planning Commission meeting. So, of course, nobody showed up at the Planning Commission to oppose the EIR, to comment on the EIR, and in particular to comment on the addendum, the city addendum to the EIR. That's wrong. So what happened? Well, nobody heard anything from us, but what would we have said? Well, we would have objected, first of all, to the lack of any litter figures for the city of Santa Barbara. There's nothing in the EIR or the addendum about litter in Santa Barbara. Isn't one of the purposes of this ordinance supposedly the reduction of litter? Well, why are there no litter figures? We objected to the lack of any kind of the discussion of storm drain capture devices, which are preventing plastic bags entering storm drains. And in particular, we would have said, well, in the city of Santa Barbara, what's going on with those storm drain capture devices? Well, of course, we never had the opportunity because we had no notice of the hearing. And another special aspect about Santa Barbara that we would have raised, tourists. Tourists come here and they don't bring reusable bags. We've seen this in San Francisco. They don't bring reusable bags with them. They buy paper bags. It's been happening in Santa Monica. It's been happening particularly in San Francisco. I challenge you to go to Market Street or Fisherman's Wharf in San Francisco on a Sunday afternoon. If you can see more than a handful of reusable bags on Market Street, well, I'd be very surprised, because you won't. You will see paper bags one after the other, because visitors don't bring reusable bags. And if they do buy a reusable bag, which is highly unlikely, they're not going to take it back. They're going to throw it away. They just need a paper bag for one item. They don't need a reusable bag that can be used 104 times if they're just popping into Trader Joe's while they're visiting this beautiful city. They're not going to do that. Of course, that's not taken into account at all in the city addendum. We would have objected if we would have had notice, if we would have even seen the document, which we never did until after the Planning Commission meeting, and that was wrong. So what did the planning commissioners think of this EIR? Well, let me quote the chairman of the planning commission. He said, that was Mike Jordan, he said, the EIR makes the options or considerations appear one-sided to someone who doesn't have the same philosophical view on the subject as I do. I was going through the pages and pages of letters and replies, mostly the replies. I just saw over and over and over again a response to the comments that was equivalent to the commenter presents no evidence. That kind of deflates the requirement to answer that comment. I've never seen that before in 3.5 years of looking at EIRs that I can remember. Is that an appropriate response to a comment? He said, I was just unimpressed with the level of structure of the EIR, and I too thought it was more of an advocative document than an unbiased document. Now, that's not me speaking, but I certainly agree, and I've never had any discussion with the chairman of the Planning Commission, but he's right. Also, Commissioner Addison Thompson stated, and by the way, the chairman agreed with him on this, he said, I don't think this EIR is ready for prime time. That's one heck of a condemnation of this document. So let's take a look at what we are complaining about. And we've just done a summary in the appeal. I can just say that the City Council is legally wrong when he says that everything that's in the record is treated as if it's in the EIR. That's not true. The EIR contains findings and conclusions. That's what you're certifying. You're not certifying people's comments. You're certifying the conclusions reached in the EIR. So just because our comments are attached to the EIR, that is not a finding on which you're basing an ordinance. Those are our comments. The problem is what's in the body of the EIR is plain wrong. So let's start to take, as I said, a look at some of those comments. Paper bag usage in Santa Monica. Let's look at that. In Santa Monica, they passed an ordinance which was, in all respects, in all relevant respects, identical to this one. They passed it in 2011. Now, the Santa Monica High School, which I'm sure you'll agree is unbiased, or if it's biased the other way from where I may be positioned. The Santa Monica High School observed, I mean, they sent out, students to observe 50,400 transactions. That's a lot of standing at supermarket checkout lines. That's a lot. Nobody else has done that kind of study anywhere else in the country. This was done by the Santa Monica Green Team. This was a fabulous study. It's in the record. You will find two charts that I've handed out with their results, a figure 3 and a figure 4. Those are their results, not ours. Now, let me say this. They studied the number of paper bags and reusable bags and no bags that were being used before the ordinance was passed and after the ordinance was passed for a year. So they did before and after. Nobody else in the state has done that. And they found that the 10-cent fee was not working, that there was a huge increase in paper bag usage. In fact, according to their figures, and you need to look at their figure number 4, because that is regular stores. Figure 3 is eco stores, the environmentally friendly Trader Joe's kinds of places. But figure 4 are the regular supermarkets and the regular stores. In those kinds of stores, paper bag usage went from 0 through the roof. Through the roof. And it was really, paper bag usage actually went from almost 0 in Santa Monica, where they were hardly using paper bags, to about 27%. It then dropped and rose again to 30% 1 year after the ordinance. And the trend line is showing that paper bag usage is going up. Reusable bag usage increased dramatically to 49% initially and then dropped to 30% by September 12th. And the line is going down. It's decreasing. Now, that is the only study that we have in this state on the impact of a plastic bag ban ordinance. Los Angeles County has been out there asserting various figures, but they have no pre-ordinance figures to go by. The only place that has pre-ordinance figures is Santa Monica. Now, Santa Monica is in some ways similar to Santa Barbara. It's a tourist town. And you need to be very careful, because in a tourist town, unlike some of the other places where they've just taken this template from all over the state, the template that Joe and Rincon Consultants love to use, they're not looking at tourist towns. This is a tourist town. It's like San Francisco and Santa Monica. Paper bag usage will go through the roof because those tourists are going to take paper bags. Why is tourism not mentioned? in the city addendum. How could that be? It's inconceivable. So I asked that the Santa Monica Ordinance be included in the EIR. We got some silly mischaracterization of what we were saying about it, and they just ignored the study, the only study in the state, and made assertions. Well, yes, 10 cents will do the trick. So the next thing is, and that was objection A, so we maintain our objection on that. Objection B, this was diabolically cynical by Rincon. There are all kinds of reusable bags. There are, on the one end of the spectrum, low-density polyethylene plastic reusable bags. Those are basically thick plastic bags. Then you've got, on the other end of the spectrum, cotton bags and canvas bags and jute bags. And somewhere in the middle, you've got polypropylene bags. Now, why do I have this spectrum? Because the ones that are acknowledged, even by Rincon, to be the best for the environment are the polyethylene, that is to say, the thick plastic reusable bags. The ones that everybody acknowledges are the worst, as the studies we presented show, including the British government study, are the cotton and canvas and jute bags. Those are the worst for the environment because the resources involved in making those are so great compared to a thin plastic bag that you have to use a plastic bag according to the British government study, which we presented, which is the only evidence in a record, 173 times on average to offset its greater impacts compared to a plastic bag. Those are the canvas, cotton, and jute reusable bags. Polypropylene depends on how thick it is. Sometimes it comes in at about 104, sometimes it comes in 90s, 80s, 70s. But it's a lot of times you've got to use a polypropylene bag. Those are those thick, kind of stiff bags that you get at Trader Joe's especially. But then you've got the thick plastic reusable bags, and everybody agrees, and in fact it's written in the EIR, those only need to be used on average 2.6 times compared to a regular plastic bag to offset the greater impacts. So which is the best for the environment? The thick plastic reusable bags, which only have to be used 2.6 times. So that's the figure that was used throughout the EIR, 2.6. They took the most favorable type of reusable bag and said, we're going to use this for all of our analysis. This is going to represent the metric for reusable bags for all of our analysis. Well, we sent you photographs. We put in the appeal, and we put into the comments on the draft EIR. We went to every single store in West Hollywood where they banned plastic bags. We went to San Francisco. We went all over the place and photographed every single rack of reusable bags that we could see. And we saw hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of racks of reusable bags. 2 of them were the low-density polyethylene bags, which only need to be used 2.6 times. Nearly all of the rest were polypropylene or cotton or canvas, which have to be used many more times than 2.6. So for them to take the 2.6 figures is just spreadsheet games. It's just not a bag you will see in Santa Barbara. It's not the kind of reusable bag that you are going to see. You don't see them anywhere. We have actually put in an declaration from a manufacturer of those bags who goes out marketing those bags to stores all the time. He said they are between 1% and 5% of the marketplace. Between 1% and 5% of the marketplace. That's Command Packaging in Los Angeles. They're one of the leading manufacturers in the state, and even they are not claiming that these bags are representative. And in fact, in the EIR, it says these are one of the most commonly used reusable bags. No, they are not. No, they are not. The next issue is the assumption that every reusable bag is going to be used 52 times. Well, there is, in fact, empirical evidence of how many times they're used. In Australia, and we put in this evidence into the objection to the EIR. In Australia, the landfills are filling up with reusable bags which are not being used. People are dumping them. They're being given so many, especially in promotions, that they're getting like 18 or 20. Many houses have 10 of them. They can't use them that much. Nobody can. Normally, a person will only take 1 reusable bag to a store, by the way, even if they need shopping, that would normally fill 4, 5, or 6 or 8 paper bags, so they have to supplement with paper bags. But in Australia, the landfill operators are complaining because these reusable bags, except for plastic, the 2.6 one, the very good one, none of the rest can be recycled. None of them. And incidentally, it does say in the EIR that polypropylene bags can be recycled. And they cannot. And that is a statement in the EIR that is made to the public and it is made to this city council. And it cannot stand because polypropylene reusable bags cannot be recycled anywhere. So very cleverly, they turn over a reusable bag at Rincon, see the chasing arrows with the number 5 symbol in it and say, oh, that proves it's recyclable. We presented the statement from the Society of Plastic Industries, which actually developed the symbol. And they said that shows you what kind of resin it is. It's nothing to do with recyclability, nothing. And in fact, the Federal Trade Commission has gotten involved in this whole issue of people using that symbol to suggest that something is recyclable and said that is deceptive marketing. So that is simply wrong, what you're hearing there about that. So this 52 times, that's just a number pull out of the air. It certainly doesn't apply to tourists coming into the city. It just doesn't. And if they do get a reusable bag, and I don't know why they would unless they're incredibly cheap, are they really going to always be taking them home? They're not going to be reusing them again here. So you just have to look at the evidence. And the evidence, especially from Australia, where they have the identical situation, is that the landfill operators are complaining that they're getting all these reusable bags are being dumped. And this is important, by the way, because this puts down your zero waste plan. It is a real problem because there are so many of these reusable bags being dumped in tourist cities. That is presenting a problem, and we've heard complaints about that. Let's talk about the trash excluders. You have on your, I believe, you have on your storm drains trash excluders, capture devices to prevent plastic bags getting in there. So why is it that that is not addressed in the EIR when we ask for it to be addressed? Stop telling people that these plastic bags get into the storm drains. They don't. They don't. The reason for those capture devices is so that you can comply with the TMDL limits. And they are intended to prevent any plastic bags getting in there. Heal the Bay, you may have heard of them. Heal the Bay says those work and they prevent. They were the ones that wanted them there in the first place for this purpose. They work. They prevent plastic bags getting into your storm drains. And it's a misrepresentation that is made in this document. I'd like to talk about marine impacts because if there's one thing that gets me emotional, if you don't think I'm already emotional about this, it's marine impacts and the misrepresentations that are made about that. And I'd like to ask Madam Mayor, your permission, I'd like to show a movie which is actually part of the administrative record. It's Exhibit BEA 013. So it is in the administrative record.
You have 10 minutes and 45 seconds, so however you want to use it, it's up to you.
Okay, so I'm going to show this movie. It's in the record.
Are you being told the truth about plastic bags?
We all know we have to minimize and one day eliminate all of the plastic bags, and I think we can all agree on that.
No, we don't all agree that we have to eliminate plastic bags. The London Times said in an editorial, "Many of those who have demonized plastic bags have enlisted scientific study to their cause. By exaggerating a grain of truth into a larger falsehood, they spread misinformation and abuse the trust of their unwitting audiences." And David Laist of the Federal Marine Mammal Commission has said, in their eagerness to make their case, some of the environmental groups make up claims that are really not supportable.
Plastic bags pose a huge environmental threat to our marine environment, 100,000 marine deaths per year due to plastic bags.
This figure is based on a misinterpretation of a 1987 Canadian study, which found that between 1981 and 1984, more than 100,000 marine mammals, including birds, were killed by discarded fishing nets. The Canadian study did not mention plastic bags. Regardless, the erroneous claim has become the keystone of a widening campaign to demonize plastic bags.
We have a global environmental crisis. You've heard the numbers on 1 million seabirds, 100,000 marine mammals annually.
David Centillo, Greenpeace marine biologist, has said, "It's very unlikely that many animals are killed by plastic bags. The evidence shows just the opposite." And David Laist of the Federal Marine Mammal Commission has said, "The impact of bags on whales, dolphins, porpoises, and seals ranges from nil for most species to very minor for perhaps a few species. For birds, plastic bags are not a problem either."
There are plastic patches now in our oceans, which are twice the size of Texas.
The idea of a single Texas-sized garbage patch is the myth of media sensationalism. Dr. Marcus Erickson, ocean explorer and director of project development at the Algalita Marine Research Foundation.
The garbage patch is a veritable plastic oasis where millions of tons of plastic garbage remain trapped by the currents. It is said to be twice the size of Texas.
Look at the video image carefully. Heal the Bay shows a giant plastic bag about the size of the entire United States, with small plastic bags behind it. They are suggesting that there's a giant island of plastic bags. But the National Science Foundation sponsored an expedition to the Pacific Ocean to search for marine debris. Most of the plastic items and particles collected were hard plastic. No large accumulations of plastic bags were found. Even Heal the Bay now admits that this claim is misleading.
I would agree that the characterization, the term, the garbage patch is, misleading in some respects. There isn't a landfill out in the middle of the ocean.
But Heal the Bay continues to make other unsupportable claims about plastic in the ocean.
One of the researchers that, has done a lot of work in this area, he said, it's sort of like a soup of plastic. Or think of, a football field that has degraded plastic confetti that's, spread across it.
Is it like a football field with plastic confetti spread across it? Angelique White, assistant professor of oceanography at Oregon State University and National Science Foundation Pacific Expedition member, has said, if we were to filter the surface area of the ocean equivalent to a football field in waters having the highest concentration of plastic ever recorded, the amount of plastic recovered would not even extend to the 1-inch line. And Karen Lavender, oceanographer at the Sea Education Association, has said, if scientists sifted through 2,000 bathtubs worth of plastic-contaminated seawater, they'd find just enough microparticles to fill the palm of a person's hand.
My daughter did a science project about 6 months ago, and she told me there's this thing called the Great Pacific Patch.
Unfortunately, misinformed politicians are banning plastic bags based on myths.
We realize how significant of a problem plastic bags are on the litter stream. It represents approximately 20% of the litter stream.
Los Angeles has not done a litter audit. However, litter audits have been done in other places, showing that plastic retail bags are only about half of 1% of litter.
The state of California alone, Caltrans and other entities, state beaches, pay over $25 million a year just to clean up the litter associated with plastic bags.
Public agencies in California spend $375 million each year for all litter prevention, cleanup, and disposal. About half of 1% of all litter is plastic retail bags. Half of 1% of $375 million is $1.9 million, not $25 million. That means it costs each person no more than 5 cents each year for all plastic bag cleanup throughout the state.
There's about $16 million or so a year spent on litter removal, and it's, I think, safe to assume, wouldn't it be, Enrique, that 5 or 6 million, maybe more of that could be attributable to plastic bags directly.
Half of 1% of $16 million is $80,000, not $5 or $6 million. $80,000 is just 2 cents for each LA City resident per year.
Think how much it would mean to this city to have an extra $5 million that we don't have to spend cleaning up bags.
In fact, not 1 penny of litter cleanup cost is saved by eliminating plastic bags. The same streets, highways, and other areas still have to be cleared of all other types of litter. So, are you being told the truth about plastic bags? Obviously not.
One of the things I talked about was marine impacts in our objections.
I'm just going to tell you you have 4.5 minutes left.
Thank you. There is this statistic which is cited in the marine impact section, and I've given you actually as a handout our objections regarding marine impacts. And I think it says that I'm having trouble actually finding it now, but it says, oh, here it is. 2.2%, I think it says, ingested plastic bags affect wildlife by clogging animal throats and so on. And it cites a study that says 2.2% of all animals are, marine animals, have been found entangled in plastic bags. Well, let's just look at that. Actually, it was in the Ocean Conservancy study of 2005. Let's look at what that study found. This is worldwide. They found a total of 8 animals were found tangled in plastic bags, 6 of which were fish and 1 of which was a bird. 6 fish, a bird, and something else, worldwide. Ocean Conservancy study, 2005. There's more fish than that in a plastic bag down at Safeway. Frozen fish. I mean, this is ridiculous. That is not a significant marine impact. They have inflated the marine impacts in the draft EIR. They're misleading the public. They're misleading you. And that's what that is designed to address. There is a misinformation issue. It's very serious. Now, I've heard everybody talking about what it is we want, but now it's my turn to talk about what it is we want. We're not looking for a rewrite of the EIR. It's too much. We're not looking to use this to block the ordinance. We don't think we object to the ordinance being passed based on the EIR as it is, but we are not looking for a rewrite of the EIR. We have said in our objections, in writing, and I'm going to say it again, we are looking for an addendum that makes these corrections, that acknowledges the errors, right? That accepts the things that we are saying, as long as they're based on evidence, which they are. It can be a 5-page addendum. It can be a 10-page addendum. We told Beacon, and I told Joe that we could do this in a week. We don't need 6 months. We could do it in a week. Let us do an addendum. Let us get these corrections on the record, make them part of the findings. And by the way, Los Angeles County, when it did its EIR, found that there would be significant negative environmental impacts, but it got around the problem by doing a statement of overriding considerations, which you can do too. Having an EIR that says that this will have a negative environmental impact doesn't stop you. You can do a statement of overriding considerations. What we're asking for is honesty in the addendum, a new city addendum. I guess a second city addendum needs to be done with corrections. We can work on that document together so that it's, foolproof. Run it back to, I guess, the Planning Commission, where that certification was not valid because there were no proper notices sent. Get that done pretty quickly, and then get it back here. That could all be done in a month. We're not talking about 6 months. There may not be any delay at all in the ordinance effective date. So everybody's telling us that, well, we have to do a whole new EIR. That's our position. It is not our position. Our position is we want the truth. It's the same as it was when I first came before the City Council. We can do a short document. Let's tell the truth.
Thank you. You have 57 seconds left should you need it after public comment. So,
well, I'll turn it over to the panel if there are any questions.
are there any questions first from council? That won't count against your 57 seconds. Any questions from council at this point, or should we go to public comment? Public comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So public comment, I have 2 minutes here up at the podium here. We'll start with Hillary Blackerby, to be followed by Brian Brennan. You put your name up, but it was just here if you had questions, or did you want to speak? Okay, then you're next. Ms. Blackerby.
Hi there. My name is Hillary Blackerby, here on behalf of Assemblymember Doss Williams. Wanted to come just briefly today and encourage you to deny the appeal and to move forward with this ordinance. You know, the City of Santa Barbara has long been an environmental leader, and it's time that we move that ball forward and do what is happening around the state, around the country, and we know it's the right thing to do. So encourage you to move forward with adopting the ordinance, and thanks for your leadership.
Brian Brennan will be followed by Bonnie Raisin.
Again, thank you, Madam Mayor and Council, for the opportunity to address you. In regards to the appeal, I definitely impassioned Mr. Joseph. I certainly appreciate that passion. Hopefully he can direct it toward the San Francisco 49ers, help him win a few more games. But I do want to say, knowing that he lives in the Bay Area and recognizing that a lot of what he has here are some of the tactics that this is not against him personally, but as a lawyer, is to slow down a process and to question whether, you know, the documents are valid and what are you standing on, and risk lawsuits, things along that line. I would only say, as Rincon Consulting has a number of EIRs that have stood up to public scrutiny and to court issues, and they are very well renowned in regards to this issue. So casting doubt upon assumptions and things like that is obviously a legal tactic. I just had the opportunity to spend almost 5 days at the different days at the on the Embarcadero watching the America's Cup races, and a lot of those folks were from New Zealand and Australia and very comfortable using reusable bags. In fact, a lot of them were walking around because they were advertising that they were in Santa Barbara, in San Francisco. So the same thing would happen here in that regard. So I just think that's a bit of a red herring that the EIR didn't address a tourist town and what happens in a tourist town. But I just, in closing, want to say that in my other hat, I sit on a city council which actually did do a debris study because of a requirement by the Water Quality Control Board in the Ventura River, very close to the ocean. There was 8 sites. It was done for 1 year and 1 day a month for a year, so 12 snapshots were taken of debris out of one area. This is about an area from about 100 yards from the ocean to almost 2 miles from the ocean, with storm drains emptying into the Ventura River and obviously catchments out of the air. There was almost 6,000 pieces of trash were counted over those 12 days, and out of those 6,000 pieces of trash, 80 to 85% were plastic, both plastic bags, plastic bottles, and plastic caps.
Where was this?
This is in the city of Ventura, right at the mouth. And it's a study that we brought in front of our council. And in closing, I would only say that the opportunity to go forward with this is there, and you can certainly take advantage of the fact that there are documented studies about debris, and plastic is a big part of it. And I want to recognize that...
You are way over your time, so
okay,
really
I appreciate that. Just I would say that plastic weighs a lot less when you weigh it, so that's, I think, counts for the less percentage of weight. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie Raisin will be followed by James Hawkins.
Excuse me. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and City Council. Excuse me. I have a frog in my throat. I came here today to talk about free will and my right to choose whether or not I use a plastic bag, a paper bag of whatever weight, of whatever dimensions, or whether I open my trunk and pull out one of my, and now I'm not even sure, I hope they're reusable. I mean, I've heard so many definitions today that I'm dizzy. But I came here today to talk about my free will as an individual. I am an American citizen born under a constitution that gives me the right to worship where I want to associate with whom I want to shop where I want to go where I want to pop the trunk of my car and use whatever particular material the bags are made of, cotton, jute, or whatever. Or I can go in knowing that I want a block of celery and some hummus, and I can look at a large paper bag, I forgot the one that I had in my car, and I can use a little plastic bag to take that celery home. I can use that plastic bag to pack some items for my grandkids. I can think of a bazillion ways to reuse all kinds of bags. And it is my right to do that. Plus, now I have heard no scientific evidence that supports this ordinance. I have heard 3 people and the gentleman from Rincon and their side of the story. And I'm sure that anyone can pick and choose what they choose to lean on to define and to get what they, want ultimately. But I have to think that on the side of science, if this is true and there's something to catch those plastic bags, I am being, and the rest of us who demand our free will in the selection of our purchasing, not to mention the cost to the markets.
Can you wind up, please?
That I would talk again long and hard against this ordinance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
James Hawkins will be followed by Megan Diaselli.
Mayor Schneider and members of the council, my name is James Hawkins. I'm a policy analyst at Heal the Ocean, and I'm here today to express our strong support for the proposed plastic bag ordinance. With San Francisco leading the way, cities across California have enacted ordinances to reduce plastic bag debris in our waterways and ocean. Just a few months ago, Los Angeles became the largest city in America to adopt a strategy to phase out plastic bag use. And these efforts have already been proven extremely successful. Most notably, a survey conducted by the city of San Jose, which adopted its own phase out of plastic bags at all retail establishments in 2012, found an 89% reduction in plastic bags in storm drains and 60% reduction in creeks. Furthermore, according to Beacon's Environmental Impact Review for the ordinance before you today, simply phasing out the use of plastic bags in local retail establishments will reduce citywide plastic bag use by an astounding 95%. That's less bags in our streets, less bags in our creeks, and less bags in our ocean. Heal the Ocean urges this council to adopt this ordinance and join the ranks of cities across the state who have taken successful action on this issue. Thank you.
Megan Diaz-Ali will be followed by Kathy King.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, my name is Megan Diaz-Ali. The city of Santa Barbara has a long, rich history as an environmental leader. Thank you for approving policy that ensures we have a healthy and vibrant environment today and moving into the future. I urge this council to continue the city's commitment and request of its residents and tourists to reduce pollution and trash by following staff's recommendation to deny the appeal filed by Save the Plastic Ban Coalition and introduce and adopt the proposed single-use carryout ban ordinance. Thank you.
Kathy King will be followed by Anthony Van Leeuwen. You're going to have to help me with your last name there.
Good afternoon, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Kathy King with the Community Environmental Council, and I was in this room in 2007 when the council at that time was asked to consider regulation of single-use bags. There was only one other law in California way back then. Today, there are 60 laws covering nearly 30% of the population of California, and states like Oregon, Washington, Maryland, Texas, and Hawaii all have regulations, as do a great many countries across the globe. There's a good reason for all this bag regulation. Plastic grocery bags are made from fossil fuels, yet are meant to be used briefly and then tossed. Some bags get a secondary use, but we are using 47 million bags per year just in Santa Barbara, and we don't have 47 million little trash cans, dogs, or lunches. The ordinance as written allows for a number of exemptions: produce bags, newspaper bags, restaurant takeout bags, while reducing our use by more than 90%. This allows for secondary uses of the exempted bags while doing our part to reduce consumption of fossil fuel products. Plastic bags have negative impacts that are vastly disproportionate to their intended use. They last forever when they blow into the environment and the ocean. In May of 2012, the majority of you sitting here today voted to put into place a single-use reduction law in Santa Barbara. The EIR before you today was coordinated by Beacon as part of a regional effort. As a result, both the County of Santa Barbara and the City of Ventura have directed staff to draft ordinances for those jurisdictions. The EIR before you has been carefully crafted, has taken a very conservative approach toward impacts of bag reduction, and has been certified by the Santa Barbara Planning Commission. City staff are confident that the EIR meets all CEQA guidelines. I respectfully request that you deny the appeal from the Save the Plastic Bag Coalition and adopt the law. Their efforts in other jurisdictions have not been successful, and they are using stall tactics that recall those of the tobacco industry in the 1960s. And putting a red X over a statement in a video does not mean that it's not true. Please stand with the Planning Commission and uphold the EIR and move forward with the first reading of the ordinance as it stands. You will be paving the way for the continued use of this EIR by jurisdictions throughout both counties, Santa Barbara and Ventura. And this is my bag that I keep in my purse, and I've used it at least twice a week for the past 4 years. Thank you.
Anthony Van Leeuwen will be followed by Kate Nelson.
In 2 minutes, there's not a whole lot I can say, but I would like to just mention that, you heard statistics about an 89% decrease in plastic bags in storm drains in San Jose. But what you don't hear is the fact that that was based on a reduction of 71 bags in 22 trash capture devices in catch basins. Not even representative of the entire city. Now, the on land and in the creeks, they found about a 60% reduction, so I wanted to correct that. Also, on Kathy Murillo, you mentioned the error in the landfill. The EIR shows a total of 150 pounds of reusable bags that go to the landfill. And I brought that to the attention of Beacon as looking incorrect. They told me the number was right. I then went to a San Mateo EIR, which used even fewer reusable bags, about 1 million less, and they had a number that was many times bigger. And so I came up with my own method, which was it's included in the Exhibit B to your findings, and calculated and find out that the landfill impact is about 4 times as much when you look at everything that goes to the landfill as a result of a bag ban. In writing a paper recently about bag bans being the wrong way to control litter, I try to analyze, well, what are all of the environmental impacts pre-ban and post-ban? And in going through the EIR, found that there were a number of items that were not calculated or not provided. So then I went to Appendix E and found some discrepancies there, which I then contacted Beacon and Rincon to see if I can get the original spreadsheet. And they would not do that, so I recreated it, and that's in my paper, and which is in your thing. So first of all, the EIR is incomplete and should be, in my opinion, rewritten. Thank you.
Kate Nelson will be followed by Kaya Stackel.
Good afternoon, Council, Madam Mayor. My name is Kate Nelson. I am co-founder and CEO of Save the Mermaids. We are an environmental education nonprofit working to educate our community about single-use plastic pollution and advocating for change that benefits the marine environment. As avid waterwomen and mermen, we see our community's trash floating in our oceans. As we've explained before, plastic never biodegrades. Thus, plastic bags threaten wildlife, including mermaids. There are plenty of risks and consequences to our city's use of single-use plastic bags. However, the point I wish to make today is that ultimately, single-use plastic is an irresponsible use of a finite resource. It is a design flaw in our efforts to make life more convenient. We only have one sea. It is limited. So is our oil supply. In fact, according to a study done by Indiana University in 2008, more than 1.6 billion gallons of oil are used in the U.S. each year for plastic bags alone. Why are we draining that high-demand resource for single-use items like flimsy plastic bags that are posing a serious threat to the environment and costing us in waste management? I'm not going to list all of the cities in the state that Kathy already alluded to, all the different countries and places that have already banned the bag or that are working on taxes or fees. It's a lot. I encourage us to, as the birthplace of the environment movement, because of a devastating oil spill in 1969, to pass this ordinance. Let us not be the last to ban the single-use plastic bag, which is slowly contributing to a massive collection of plastic waste in our oceans, essentially a massive oil spill. And I brought samples from my voyage to the Great Pacific Trash Gyre. It is not an island, no. Plastic does not biodegrade, it photodegrades. That means light hits it and it breaks up into tiny microscopic pieces of plastic, essentially an oil spill. I'll let you look at this.
You don't have to give that to him. You can.
Oh,
that's
okay.
That's all right. We saw it.
So this is off the coast of Oahu. So it's a gigantic, it is a plastic soup. Also.
Your time is up also.
Oh, okay. Well, it's Team Marine from Santa Monica High School. And their statistics showed that it was a 31% increase in reusable bag usage and an 18% increase in paper.
Thank you.
And that, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Kaya Stackel will be followed by Penny Owens.
Hi, good afternoon, Mayor, City Council members. I'm Kaya from Save the Mermaids. No matter where we are in Santa Barbara, if you're on top of the 154 to Mesa Lane, the one thing we all have in common is we love our beaches. We love our coastal waters. 70% of the world is covered by the ocean, and it's such a vital resource for all of us to take care of. When I go into schools, I teach our children that every single thing that we do, we're all connected by water. We're all in rivers, we're on lakes. We have drainage, sewage systems, watersheds. And where does all that go? It goes to our ocean. So if we're going to start any kind of trait of being, environmentally conscious in such a beautiful city, it can start so simple. It can start with just banning plastic bags. So please, thank you.
Penny Owens will be followed by Kira Redmond.
Afternoon, Madam Mayor, council members. Penny Owens with Santa Barbara Channel Keeper. I'd like to thank you again for all your work and time on this issue to address the environmental problems posed by single-use plastic bags. And as my position at Channel Keeper, I coordinate and implement all of our cleanup activities. And while plastic bags did not fall into the top 5 of the items collected in Santa Barbara beaches and creeks, it did fall into the top 6. So it's well within the top 10 of items collected. And just recently, we hosted Coastal Cleanup Day, where many community members here went out and participated in cleanups. And Channel Keeper's adopted beach is West Beach. And between West Beach and about half a mile of East Beach, so less than a mile total, we collected 25 single-use plastic grocery bags. So they are present at our creeks and our beaches. So it's been a long road for us to get here today, many years of research, meetings, education, and I personally have distributed, along with Kathy King and several other community members, over 5,000 free reusable bags to our community. So the time has come, and we really appreciate your leadership in drafting this model ordinance and using it for Beacon's regional EIR, which is a cost-saving tool that will be available to municipalities throughout Santa Barbara and Ventura County. The retailers that will be most affected by this proposed ordinance, the Grocers Association, which are here today as well, and you've heard from several times throughout this process, they also have found that paper bag use does not increase dramatically as predicted by opponents of the bag ban, and have even seen some stores where bag policy has been enacted for a long period of time. They've seen up to 94% of the customers bringing their own reusable bags with them, which is pretty impressive, I think. Santa Barbara citizens are ready and willing to take this step to help lighten our heavy environmental footprint. So on behalf of Channel Keeper, I urge you to follow the staff's recommendations to uphold the decision of the Planning Commission to certify the EIR and to adopt the single-use bag ordinance. We look forward to Santa Barbara joining the 81 other cities and counties in California that are currently taking action to stem the tide of plastic pollution. Thank you for your time.
Kira Redmond will be followed by Sarah Sheehy, then Bill Hickman, and the final speaker will be Kat Lotwork and Leah Nelson.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council members. I'm Kira Redmond, Executive Director of Santa Barbara Channel Keeper, and I would like to thank you for taking the initiative to enact this plastic bag ban ordinance. Channel Keeper, our constituents, our oceans, and our marine life appreciate your initiative. And as Ms. Owens, my colleague, just said, Channel Keeper is in the field on a regular basis, and we can tell you from firsthand experience that plastic bag pollution is indeed a problem here in Santa Barbara. Using reusable bags is easy, and I think most of the people in Santa Barbara are ready to take that step. Unfortunately, we've learned that education alone will not stimulate the shift as well as an ordinance will. The EIR is thorough and sound, and you and your staff and the Planning Commission have done their job well. Unfortunately, I fear that the Save the Plastic Bag Coalition has nothing to fear. Santa Barbara's passage of a plastic bag ban will not mean the death of the plastic bag. Their appeal is simply an affected industry ploy to protect their profits and delay and scare you. But you needn't be scared. Their appeals have failed in many other instances. And their arguments are, in many cases, ludicrous. Using a reusable bag 2 times, as many of the other testifiers have said, I've had reusable bags for 5-10 years that I've used thousands of times. Channel Keeper urges you to follow the recommendation of your staff and deny the appeal, uphold the Planning Commission certification of the EIR, and move forward with adopting the ordinance. I think it's really unnecessary for you to add an addendum that simply restates industry-funded misinformation. You can count on Channel Keeper to continue to work hard in cooperation with the city to make sure that this ordinance succeeds in eliminating Santa Barbara's contribution to the massive problem of plastic pollution in our oceans. Thank you.
Sarah Sheehy. Actually, the final speaker will be Rachel Riggio. So if there anyone else who would like to speak, we need a speaker slip. Go ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Sheehy. I'm with the California Grocers Association. And on behalf of CGA, we are very comfortable with regulation pertaining to single-use carry-out bags. We further appreciate your intention to move forward with what has become the model ordinance in California, banning plastic while mandating a charge on paper for retailers. We are also encouraged by the regional approach spearheaded by Beacon that encompasses jurisdictions within Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. Having identical ordinances, which include banning plastic and mandating a 10-cent charge on paper, helps our members avoid a patchwork of different policies among local jurisdictions and helps lessen confusion our customers inevitably face among jurisdictions as city boundaries are so close together. We know these ordinances work in promoting reusable bag use. Our stores have told us that reusable bag use increases to almost 94% of customers bringing in reusable bags within 6 months of implementation. We also haven't seen an uptick in paper bag usage in any area that has implemented carry-out bag ordinances. Not in any tourist county, nowhere. The amount of paper bag usage about after a month of these things kicking in seems to be about the same. However, the most important component of carry-out bag regulation is the mandated charge for paper. According to the Master and Environmental Assessment study done by Green Cities, California, the charge is the incentive that gets people to bring reusable bags, the true goal of any carry-out bag regulation. These types of model ordinances contain significant stakeholder approval and clearly articulate that a ban on plastic charge for paper model helps everyone. Again, we really appreciate the city's intent and commitment to the environment and to local business, and we urge you to move forward with the regional approach of banning plastic and mandating a 10-cent charge on paper. Thank you.
Bill Hickman.
Hello, Mayor, City Council. My name is Bill Hickman with the Surfrider Foundation. Thank you very much for considering this important issue, and Surfrider encourages you to approve the staff recommendations for this item. We have been here before many times, and we hope you see through these red herrings to take this important step to reduce plastic pollution. With 7 billion people on the planet, plastic pollution is turning into a tragedy of the commons, and Santa Barbara can play a small role to help out. I see the problem firsthand when I'm out surfing and pull plastic checkout bags from the ocean. I see them when I'm biking around town. And they are a top 5 items at beach cleanups that Surfrider hosts. I saw a dead cormorant firsthand recently this Labor Day weekend that washed up ashore with a plastic bag wrapped around its head. Regarding the low-density polyethylene reusable bags mentioned earlier, Command Packaging recently announced that they are opening a new plant up in Salinas to recycle agricultural plastic waste into new bags, reusable bags that are compliant with the ordinances throughout California. So that's creating jobs and adding those bags to the mix. Plastic bags blow. That's why the storm drain catchments are not fully effective with capturing plastic bags. At the Teaguas landfill, plastic bags are a big nuisance. On windy days, they have to set up fencing and hire contract workers to track down and capture plastic bags that are flying away when trash trucks dump them and front-end loaders sort them. Those are costs that have to be passed on to the customers, us. So while plastic bags don't have the volume or weight of other items that are littered or thrown away, plastic bags do have the dubious honors of being killers of wildlife and a menace in the recycling and waste stream. There is an easy solution to reusable bags, so we encourage you to follow the staff recommendations and approve the item today. Thank you for your time.
Kat Lockwood and Leah Nelson, and then Rachel Riggio will be the final speaker.
Hello there. Hi, my name is Kat Lockwood. This is Leah Nelson. We're from CalPERG, the statewide student-run nonprofit. We just wanted to say thank you very much for moving forward to ban plastic bags and show just how many citizens of Santa Barbara and students at UC Santa Barbara really care about protecting our oceans and stopping ocean pollution. So first, we brought thousands of petitions from students on campus.
And yeah, we've been working for 2 years on campus to get this plastic bag ban. We've teamed up with over 19 other student groups, including Surfrider and the Coastal Commission. And together we found that students really care about this issue. And like we said, we have thousands of petitions here addressed to the City Council stating that these students really care about banning the plastic bag.
And then we also brought petitions from our coalition partner, Environment California, that's been working, talking to actual constituents of the city of Santa Barbara. So for the past 3 years, Environment California has been working in neighborhoods and communities in Santa Barbara, talking to constituents one-on-one and demonstrating public support. So they've also gotten thousands of petitions and signed up thousands of members who actually live here in the city of Santa Barbara, who also really want to see a plastic bag ban to protect our oceans. So thank you very much. We just wanted to bring them up and show you how much people care and how they really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Rachel Riggio.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel Riggio. I'm the president of the Red Road Foundation. We're building community programs around the world for child victims in need. I just want to say one thing today, and that's that in this day and age, with all the suffering that's going on, with all the killing that's going on in our world and our environment, people killing each other, child trafficking, horrible things, I don't understand why anybody would want to fight against trying to do something good for our world. We need it more than ever, and please, let's do some good for our world. It's a new time, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. Mr. Joseph, you still have 57 seconds left if you want to use any part of that.
There are so many statistics, false statistics put out there. One of them was about a 94, well, actually, California Growers Association, let me address that. The California Independent Grocers Association has opposed the ban in the city of Los Angeles. The California Grocers Association only represents Safeway and Albertsons and Vons and the big stores. The little stores are not represented by CGA. They are represented by the California Independent Grocers Association, primarily, which has opposed the ban in the city of Los Angeles, and I'm sure they would similarly, if they were going to get involved in every city, oppose the ban here. What about those smaller stores? CGA does not speak for them. CGA does not speak for them. We've heard all kinds of statistics and a lot of spin. We are interested in evidence. We have provided evidence for every single thing we have said, documented evidence. It's in the record. All we're asking for is a city addendum where we sit down and get the truth told. It'll take us a week. Is that really a terrible delay? Thank you.
Okay, it's back to the council. Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. First of all, I wanted to ask a couple more questions about the groundwork. Why has one of the options of looking at this problem been to charge a fee for a plastic bag? Is that?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember White, I'll give you an example, LA County, and this was reflective of the city of Santa Barbara's own experience. As I said, we started in August of 2009 with a voluntary program, so did LA County some years back. We found that, just like us, or LA County found that just like us, the voluntary programs raise awareness. We were able to give out 7,100 reusable bags free of charge to city consumers since March of last year. But what we found is that, and what LA County found is that it's the monetary incentive, it's the fee that actually changes behavior. And so that was the basis.
My question was, has the option of charging a fee for a plastic bag, where did that start and where did that go in the decision-making matrix that through time?
Madam Mayor, there's a simple answer to that question. The state law does not allow it. I think it's AB. I get my
AB 2449.
So there's a state law that bans fees.
It was repealed. It's allowed.
So Okay, but our council is informing us that there's a ban on fees for plastic bags. Is there reasoning? Do you know what the at least the rationale is behind that?
It was part of legislation that resulted in the boxes outside of most grocery stores where you could actually recycle for reusing your plastic bags. It appeared to be part of an effort by the state legislature to deal with these issues, but I think experience has shown that people feel like it hasn't dealt with the issues of plastic bags adequately. And so, and I've said this before, this is a concern that cries out for statewide regulation, but Sacramento has to date apparently chosen not to address it on a statewide basis.
Thank you. Mr. Joseph, your time is up. I will say, no, Mr. Joseph, your time is up. Mr. Joseph, there was a bill, there was a sunset clause. That's what happened.
Okay, so now a fee is possible with plastic bags at this point.
And unless the state law changes again, which is up to Sacramento.
All right. Well, and that does lead me to the at least to the point that it's bothersome to me that our jurisdiction has been required to take on the task of writing environmental impact reports and drawing up this legislation when at the state level this could be done for hundreds of jurisdictions. It's a waste. This is an expensive undertaking, a time-consuming undertaking, and I just disappointment is an understatement for how I feel about how we, as a small jurisdiction, are being required to go through this expense in order to accomplish this task. It's just one more failing of our legislature, and so this is the choice that where we can go and where we can take on this issue, which is clearly one that's all of us who live in this era are just appalled by the spread of this of plastic bags in our world, and this is one step that in that direction. I wish there were stronger steps that we could take, and as I say, the fact that we're not getting leadership at the state level, which is where this really belongs. I mean, you can go national on this too, of course, but that's we're patching this thing together, and that's too bad because it's, as I say, it's talk about waste. It's a waste of a lot of time, money, and fine minds to be working on this at this local level. But I certainly support the direction that this ordinance heads, and with that, I'll just see what my other colleagues have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Francisco.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what we're focused on here in this appeal is whether the EIR is adequate, and the Planning Commission, there was one dissenting vote, Mr. Thompson, certified this EIR, and that's really the question that's before us in the appeal. I have not read all 625 pages of the EIR. I think actually it's a sort of a sad commentary on where our state is, that a 625-page document is necessary to decide what kind of shopping bags we use. But that pretty much characterizes the state right now. I would agree with many of Mr. Joseph's criticisms of the facts here, because the facts are very hard to find. I know I've done my own research on this, and there is enormous disagreement about the impact of plastic bags on the environment, on marine mammals, and unfortunately, I don't think that's going to be resolved anytime soon. For the purposes of this ordinance, this EIR is probably adequate. I question many of the facts in it. A lot of them are based on extrapolations from sampling and methods that don't really make very much sense to me, but that does not differentiate it from most EIRs. So, as I said, I have some serious reservations about the facts in this EIR, but I think as EIRs go, it's about par for the course. And so I will vote to deny the appeal simply because this is standard procedure. Thank you.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Mr. Francisco is right. We're not here debating the efficacy of the ordinance because that was decided before. I felt that, like Ms. Raisin said, that it would be better to leave things in the hands of the individuals and pro-choice. Most of the people here today don't agree with that. But I did want to ask, and clarification, Mr. Power, do you agree or not with the LDPE stats that Mr. Joseph mentioned? Is he talking accurately there? I was talking about percentage of, what bags get yearly used or not.
Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily talking about percentages. I believe he was referring to a rate for the LDPE bags upon which we did a lot of the analysis for greenhouse gases, et cetera.
Right.
The rate, it has been concluded that those generate about 2.6 times the greenhouse gases of the HDPE bags that they would replace.
Right.
Mr. Josephs, I believe, correctly said that the cotton bags have been cited as having 104 times the greenhouse gas effect of the single-use plastic bags. So I think his numbers are correct there. We're not disagreeing with that.
Right.
We had actually used the 2.6 in this document and some others that we've prepared at Mr. Joseph's suggestion. Ironically enough, he has since seen another study that has the 104 for the canvas bags, and again, we're not disagreeing with it. Based on his comments and suggestions, we, as I mentioned before, we ran through the calculations based on the 104. Obviously, we got higher emissions under that scenario than the 2.6 that we used in the original EIR, but again, we did the calculations, we compared the emissions to the significance thresholds, and again determined that the impact would be under the significance threshold. So we did the analysis that he requested using the assumption that he thought was accurate, and we assumed that for all bags. We assumed every bag then was going to be canvas. We thought that was a reasonable approach. We looked at what he wanted us to look at with his assumptions.
I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I just want to know something.
Understand. We got the same conclusion.
Which bag are we liable to use here more?
Well, it could be either. I mean, I don't know exactly the breakdown of, how many LDPE versus canvas get used. I don't know who has that data.
Okay.
I can tell you we have LDPE at my house. We definitely use them. Others do. I see them in stores around, but I think I see canvas as well. I don't know what the breakdown is.
Is polypropylene recyclable?
I don't know the answer to that.
One of the questions that was sort of interesting was that, which I never thought of, was about tourists coming here, and it does seem logical that tourists would more readily use plastic. So the only number that I know right off of the top of my head is that we have about 60,000 cruise visitors here. Will we make some arrangement in advance so they could have reusable bags, or have we thought of that? I know the vessels probably could do it, and they'd charge for it and be happy to.
Madam Mayor, Councilman Hotchkiss, one of the things we can do is notify, for example, the Chambers of Commerce or those that are interfacing with the cruise ships to prepare them for the fact that this ordinance is in effect when they come into Santa Barbara. In our research and speaking with San Luis Obispo, for example, they have done a lot of outreach with the hotel industry, the lodging industry, for that very purpose, to prime visitors before they come, so that they're ready.
Well, that's really a captive audience, as it were, and that would seem to be a logical place to go so people knew what to expect and were well equipped. Well, I find most of Mr. Joseph's arguments compelling, but they're not compelling to the EIR. They're compelling to the basic issue. And we're really debating here the EIR. I don't think that, even though I would like to support it in a sense, that it would make really a substantial amount of difference in the ultimate outcome. So I'm going to deny the appeal, but with full appreciation of the work that went into it.
Ms. Murillo?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to start by thanking everyone who showed up today, and also the people who sent in it must have been hundreds of emails, and some of them you could tell were standardized, but still someone took the trouble to say, please pass a ban on plastic bags. So I just wanted to say to the people who couldn't make it here today, I did take a look I took a look at every one of your names to see who you were. I do appreciate that we took a regional approach, and that Beacon was able to work cooperatively and produce an EIR, which I support. Rincon does have a good reputation. Our staff has a good reputation, and I'm ready to support their recommendations going forward. Thank you to the California Grocers Association. You really put things into context there for us. And I am friends with an owner of two small neighborhood grocery, the little neighborhood corner markets that are so wonderful in Santa Barbara. You know, you're out of your tomato sauce or your half and half for the morning, and there it is right there on the corner. But this fellow told me that he's getting ready to provide reusable bags to all of his regulars, and that's what those little neighborhood markets have. It's the same people who go there, and so I think the owners of our smaller markets are preparing for the change. I think the question has been answered about paper bag usage and how that fits into the equation. I think the question has been answered about tourists coming here and using bags when they get here. I know we do have the guards on our storm drain openings, but it was stated, and because I live here, I know that we have some open waterways, and there's ways that the plastic bags get into the creeks. And thank you to Ms. Owens for reminding us that when we have cleanups, our volunteers really do find those plastic bags at the beach and down in our creeks. I would say to Mr. Joseph that, the change of address issue, I would imagine your mail was forwarded, and I think it was your job to keep track of what the city was doing in relationship to the Planning Commission. And and if you didn't do your job, it's not our fault. And then I'm glad you're using the word spin. I think you would be able to recognize what spin is. The last thing I would say is Save the Plastic Bag Coalition. Did we have a Save the 8-track tape coalition? Or was there a coalition to save asbestos building construction materials? Sometimes in our society, things outlive their usefulness, and we need to make changes. And plastic bags is one of those things that needs to be retired and taken out of the natural environment. I would support denying the appeal, Madam Mayor, and putting forward our ordinance. Thank you.
Mr. House?
Just maybe, I don't even know why I need to say this, but I think and I'm going to appreciate Mr. Joseph and his doing his job. And I think that if I thought there were inaccuracies in something and I had my own perspective on it, I could be driven to distraction by a discussion like this, and he's doing his job. And sir, I appreciate your standing up for what you believe in, and both of you, by the way, for giving us so much to really chew on. I watch the direction of where things are going in the world, and lastly, I will appreciate your initial remarks. We're really trying very hard to make things better, all of us. And as we move forward in seizing opportunities to reduce our negative impacts on the planet, this is yet another opportunity. And it's a chance that I know that Santa Barbarans in the largest perspective, I mean, people I talk to anyway, and the ones that have been communicating with us, just really want to have us as a community do things that are better for our environment. And we've certainly seen what happens when mistakes are made and the environment gets hurt by those mistakes. So just in a big general thing, we're moving in the right direction. I am really impressed that we managed to do this on a regional basis. This is, and Mr. Brennan, I sit on the board with you and as the director, and had the privilege of hearing my colleagues representing the other coastal cities in these two counties. And it was remarkable when the light bulb went off for the group that there was an opportunity for us to take a look at this in a broader perspective, not just one jurisdiction or another all by itself, but to see what the impact might be in the larger scope of it, and then to realize we had a role to play in that. And so I do appreciate Rincon for taking this on the way we were hoping that it would be, and really look into these things. And everybody's had a chance to contribute to the dialogue. So here we are, and with a lot of people in the community very interested in watching very closely. I do believe the Planning Commission did what a Planning Commission is supposed to do, really looked at it hard, had that kind of discussion, and then made a determination. They've certified the environmental impact report, and certainly I think we should uphold that. I appreciate something, Mr. Ford. We talked about what the city will do once this becomes implemented, that we really have a chance to support our community in fulfilling on it, not just having it be a piece of paper somewhere up on a shelf, but that we really follow through. And then in a couple of years, we're going to take a look and see how it's going. I mean, that's a really good idea. And so I think that's the most important stuff I want to say. And I'm moving right now the staff's recommendations that we see up on the wall, but with great appreciation for everyone on both sides of this who come and participated, so we could have a really a good, well-informed decision per CEQA.
Second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. So thank you, Kathy King. I was trying to think what year it was, 2007, and I knew it was somewhere around there when this issue first came to us. And it was close to around that time where I think the California legislature came really close to passing a statewide ban or a law. And it went through the Assembly, and it died in the state Senate. I believe even the governor at the time said maybe he was support. I don't know if I can't really remember, but it was pretty close to really happening. And so I appreciate Mr. White's comments early on about, my goodness, how much time, and back then one other jurisdiction in the state of California had an ordinance such as this one, and now we're up to 60 plus, and how much time and energy and money it took to go through all of that. Mainly because of lobbying and because of threat of lawsuits, and there have been many lawsuits. Part of the reason, in my opinion, why this EIR is so lengthy and detailed is because of the threat of lawsuits we've seen throughout the state, and doing whatever possible to try to reduce that likelihood. Manhattan Beach being a small community, it was found through the California Supreme Court, I believe, that they didn't have to do an EIR, but a big region like this may. And so just to err on the side of caution, it went through this process. And again, had the state done its work back in 2007, 2008, that wouldn't have to happen. So, the point of trying to do everything possible to do the right thing and to do it in a way that is in a way that can fit through the court system and pass through the court system, it became necessary and costly and timely. But I think what we have here in front of us today is not only the City of Santa Barbara's ordinance, but hopefully will be one, as was mentioned, as a regional level. And I really have to acknowledge Beacon and all the board members there, and particularly Mr. House. Not only did you bring it through the Beacon process, but as chair of ordinance committee, creating the model ordinance that hopefully we will see throughout 2 counties, and that is pretty significant. That's going to cover a lot of ground. It's going to make things easier in terms of a regulatory process, so you don't, like you said, have a patchwork of different regulations. It is supported by the California Grocers Association, which to me is a significant stakeholder. So that's pretty significant in itself. So I'm pleased that this happens on your watch, finally. Took a while, but I think we're finally here. So, phew, thank you. With that, any other questions or comments? Mr. Francisco.
Yes. Mr. Four, how many stores are going to be affected by this ordinance?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember House, there are about 20 of the Tier 1 stores. And I believe there are about 64 of the Tier 2 and about another 18 that we're not sure of, that we're still checking on their status.
Okay. And what's the administrative burden on those stores and on your department in implementing the ordinance?
You know, we've looked at a number of cities, and it sort of varies. You know, some cities saying it's been a lot, others are not. We're hopeful that after 60 have gone before us, it's easier, you know, because of things like the CGA prepping their members. We intend to do a lot of this through a website so that stores can go there and learn and see videos and see examples, have the paperwork they need, have lists of vendors they can contact, and have a good outreach program. So I think you know, we will certainly go and make one-on-one or individual visits to those 20 stores. We'll likely spend a little bit more time with the other 64 smaller Tier 2 ones, but we also have a year grace period to do that. And so I feel confident that we can cover this under our existing budget, you know, and existing personnel.
Okay, thank you. And I, too, thank everyone who came to the meeting today. I have gotten a lot of emails. There are people of goodwill and good intentions on both sides of this question. When this came before the council last time, when the idea of this ordinance came before the council last time, I suggested that we do this in a regional basis, and my rationale there was that I knew this ordinance was going to pass no matter what, and I wanted to save the city some money to the extent that we could. Mr. Four informed me that the total cost of the EIR was $66,000, and that the city's share of that was $8,000. So saving $58,000 was a worthwhile objective of mine, and I will honor my promise and vote for recommendation B to ratify the ordinance.
So with that, we do have a
Madam Mayor.
motion. And yes, Mr. Wiley?
Can I make sure the record's real clear on the motion that it's the two staff recommendations?
Go ahead,
A
Mr.
and
House.
B?
Yes, A and B.
It is A and B of the staff recommendations. Deny the appeal and uphold the Planning Commission certification of the final EIR and introduce and subsequently adopt the proposed single-use carry-out bag ordinance.
And as stated in the council agenda report, that would include the preparation of a draft findings resolution, which we would bring back at the adoption date.
And when I referred it, when I read off up there, the actual staff recommendation is right here in our staff report. That's what I'm referring to, which is complete, like you just said.
And the seconder understands that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. With that, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you all very much. All right. Thank you. So we do have one small item left, so if you're leaving the room, if you could do so quietly and then speak outside, that would be fine. Any council member committee assignment reports? Ms. Murillo.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This morning, I was at the Youth Service Providers meeting of the Gang Task Force, and as usual, we shared information there about different youth-serving programs. Our own police department's PAL program is expanding its soccer league offerings, and that's really a good thing for our Latino youth. They just love soccer. And what PAL is doing is offering it at $20 a piece, and they're even offering scholarships if families cannot afford that. The full Gang Task Force Council is meeting on October 16th. I think that's a Wednesday, 3 to 5 p.m. at the Faulkner Gallery. That's for people who are paying attention to that law enforcement and youth issue. Over the weekend, I attended the Eco Faith event. It's a new movement engaging churches and faith groups in responding to climate change. And then I'd like to close by congratulating Casa Serena for 54 years offering a sober living environment to women here in Santa Barbara. It's a beautiful house, and I really congratulate all the women, actually, who've gotten sober there. Thank you.
Mr. White.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yesterday, the Sustainability Committee met and reviewed the summary of fiscal year 2014 sustainability projects. There will be a 4-page summary printed up here in the next couple of months, and so that will be circulated amongst council. We heard interesting summaries of a range of projects from the energy projects we've been hearing about to water conservation and various the trash management activities. So we'll be getting back a summary that will be passed around amongst council. Sounds like somewhere closer to the end of the year.
Mr. Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had a sort of unusual opportunity on your behalf, thank Cottage Rehabilitation Hospital for what they've done here. And you can imagine how personally I was looking out in the audience and I could name half of them. You helped me do this and you helped me do that. And it was, it's nice to go and represent the city, but when you can say from your heart what a fabulous job they do, it was really rewarding. And I reiterate, as a realtor, I've used that as a selling point. I said, we got the best medical stuff in the region here in Santa Barbara, so don't think about buying elsewhere. Come right here. And it's really true. Thanks.
I want to acknowledge the Milpas Community Association, everyone involved with the Taste of Milpas event on Saturday. I stopped by towards the end of it, and they were quite busy, and what a great way to showcase the eclectic and diverse fare all up and down Milpas Street. And thank MTD, they provided shuttles for people to get up and down the street. So that was pretty cool to see, and I'm sure it'll be the first annual of many. And then want to acknowledge some city staff, mostly in our Parks and Recreation Department, getting some awards from the Santa Barbara Beautiful Awards ceremony on Sunday, including the mural outside the East Side Library and the Public Open Space Award going to the Andre Clark Bird Refuge, which was lovely. And there's one other, and I'm forgetting it. There's one other I can't remember at the moment that the city was involved with, and so that was very exciting as well. And the Arts Fund anniversary of 30 years, a great place who had a great celebration on Sunday night as well. So anyone else? Okay, and with that,